What's up, guys? In this video, I'll be rehauling a Trick or Treat Studios Boogeyman mask. I'm a big fan of this mask because in my opinion, I think it's one of the more accurate Halloween 1 masks that you can get from them. It's sculpted by Justin Mabry, as are many of their other masks, and I believe this one is derived from the Night Owl Psycho. It has a simple paint job, but it works, and the hairline, well, it's not so great on this mask. It's actually pretty bad. So that's the first thing that I'm going to address. I'm just going to rip off the hairline first and then work my way back. But as you can see, the hair is really stuck on there and it was putting up a fight. I did start to make some progress, but after a little while, it was driving me nuts. So whatever was still stuck on the mask, I left it for later. And I also used an X-Acto knife, but it didn't really help me all that much. He's looking pretty rough after that hair treatment, and you can see this is what's left after all that pulling, but I'll handle this at a later point. This spot is basically where paint ripped off when I was pulling the hair. And something like this happened when I was working on my Halloween Ends mask, except it was right near the eye. I wasn't using the right Dremel attachment, but same thing still kind of stands. If you paint over a rip or tear like that, you're just going to see the outline, so to me there was no point leaving it. If it were above the hairline, it would have been hidden, and I would have just left it, but that's not the case. I decided to strip off all the paint, which was not my original plan, honestly. You do see this area of factory paint where there's a little bit of texturing, I guess. So the other benefit of doing something like this is to reveal more detail. I would personally recommend doing this with any of the 2018 and up masks, like any of the Blumhouse Myers masks, because those have a little bit more complexity and they're a little bit more busy with the sculpt. But either way, I'm already this far with this one, so I'm just moving along with the dremeling. Speaking of that, I am also using a felt tip, which is a lot more forgiving and a little safer with the latex. This was a long process, and it was honestly kind of a pain in the ass, but sometimes it's gotta be done. After that, I sanded the mask pretty lightly and then wiped it down with naphtha. You do want to be careful because it can warp and ruin the latex. I also wiped the hell out of the leftover hair just to loosen up the glue and get rid of what I could. The eye cuts aren't normally ideal out the factory because they don't always cut to the line. That's why I think it's worth maybe modifying them a little bit. That's what I do next with my Dremel here, and I'm just making them a little wider as well because in this sculpt they're kind of on the round side. After making some adjustments, this is pretty much what I'm left with. There were also some holes left behind when I stripped off the paint, so I just took some liquid latex and filled them in. I did a little bit of sanding and I wiped them down with naphtha and they were smooth. So this is the latex I used from Monster Makers in addition to their colorant. The latex was used to fill in the holes, and then I also used it for the base coat. For the skin tone, I did any base coat really, I did 1 part latex, 1 part water, preferably distilled if you have it so it won't react with the latex, and then 1 part paint, which was acrylic. As many people are aware, the original Captain Kirk mask had more of a tan skin tone. They basically took that, painted it white, and then some of the skin tone remained, and then more was exposed as the white paint wore off. That's basically what happened, and that's kind of what I'm trying to replicate. Now, the colorant that I showed earlier helped get that tan skin tone, but it was giving me some problems with blotchiness. I know it's just a first layer, but you can see here there are some weird marks where it kind of dried a little oddly. So I switched my mixture, and I got rid of the colorant. I don't know if that was truly the issue or not, but I'm just using only acrylic paint that I blended to get the right color, and after that, I wasn't really having any issues. Again, I don't really know what the root cause or problem could have been, but at this point, things are looking pretty good, at least. So now I'm finally laying down the white paint. This is still the same acrylic paint to water to latex. I'm doing that so that it stays flexible, but as far as the acrylic goes, it's only titanium white as far as I can remember. I didn't tint it or color it with anything else. I'm just keeping it simple. And also, I am spraying thin coats here, just starting off a little easy, and I'm spraying at a downward angle. This is so that the shadows have a little bit more skin tone. And I'm also leaving the nose and the lips and parts of the ears and neck more exposed because that's just where I want it to show through. As I was painting, I did change my plan a little bit, and I decided to add more white just to give it a fresher, cleaner look. Not completely clean though, but I didn't want this to be dirty or super weathered either. I'm digging out some boogers, but I'm also trying to expose more skin tone again. So, like what I just said, I want this to be more of a clean mask, but I think this will help sell the look, because theoretically, white paint would have came off on the higher spots. I'm working on the shadows here, and I'm using a makeup brush to dry brush some light gray acrylic paint. This is without any water or latex. If you go thin, you don't really need that. I'm also trying to be subtle because really I'm just trying to replicate shadows. I see people, a lot of people, actually overdo it and it ends up kind of looking like makeup on the mask. It's a little goofy, but in this case, I really do think less is more. So I'm just trying to apply a bit of that paint on the areas where you'd normally see shadows, like the lips, the nose, under the nose, eyebrows, and then of course the ear here as well, parts of it. I went a little heavier on the neck just to show some more grime and wear, and then I moved on to the cheeks. This is another part that tends to get overdone, so I'm just trying to be gentle with the application. I also did some weathering on the back of the neck because that's a spot you'd be likely to grab and touch. I actually ended up going a little overboard with the weathering and some of the shadows, at least in my opinion, so I went back and sprayed some white. This process can be real back and forth, and this is something I faced with other rehauls, especially like with the 2018 and the Kills and Ends masks. This one's no different, just a back and forth process till you get that happy medium. I tried to rub out the black paint, but it wasn't coming off, so that's why I'm just spraying white on. This time around, I wanted to avoid shadowing or weathering the bottom lip, which is actually kind of what I did before. If you look at different screenshots, you'll see that the mask kind of appears that way. After working on the lips, I moved on to shading the area up above the chin as well. I redid the cheeks and then made a few adjustments and revisions here and there. And now this is where the mask is at. I did a bit of extra shading underneath the chin and around the neck, and I also made the ears a little dirtier and a little bit more weathered. So now it's ready for clear coat. I am now spraying on some matte Liquitex clear coat. As you can tell, I like to use my airbrush whenever I can, but I do believe you can brush this stuff on as well. If you do decide to spray this, definitely recommend cleaning your airbrush right after because it will gum up for sure. So they ripped the sideburns off the original Kirk mask and it left glue lines behind. That's pretty much what I'm replicating here. I'm using a popsicle stick to spread the glue out and kind of add a bit of a texture. Some people do this before painting. I've also seen it done after, but honestly, the main reason I did it after was because I kind of forgot about this stage. I took some leftover hair and added it to the glue while it was drying, just as a little detail. After the glue dried, I did some weathering just to give the glue lines some more depth. I kept looking at the eyes and then I decided to open them up a little bit more. They just had to be a bit wider, and I felt I could reshape them to make them look a little bit more accurate. I know it's a bit late in the game to be doing something like this, but I figured it'd be better now than later. And then I also repainted the insides black after I was done. Now I'm finally doing the hair. I do apologize because it had been some time since I last did a full rehair, and I kind of don't know what I'm doing still, but I just lay down a bead of glue and put a section of hair on, and I kept doing that until I got to this point. So just kept putting the glue on, putting a little bit of glue on the hair itself, and then laying it on the glue line. And I'm using a popsicle stick and some tweezers, which are not seen, to adjust things. And now I'm finally moving on to the hairline itself at the front here. This was tricky because I couldn't get the hairline to lay flat and stick, but I had to struggle a little bit before I finally got to a good place. I could have done a better job with the hairline, but I just left it as is. After the glue dried, I did some trimming and got rid of the stray hairs. I gave this thing a major haircut. The way that I laid the hair down, it was just way too thick. So that's why I'm going through and cutting all this hair off. I'm wetting the hair to get it ready for styling. This is going to be more of a preliminary hairdo, and then I'm going to restyle it later when things are dry. It's easier to manipulate the hair and blend it together when it's wet like this, so that way it won't look all choppy. And if I need to, it's also a little easier for me to yank the hair and pull it if I need to get it thin. I'm scruffing up the hair to make it more wavy. I should have been a little bit more careful though, because the water actually started to activate the glue. I made the hair darker by spraying it with a mixture of black acrylic ink and alcohol. I believe with the original, they just hit it with black spray paint as well, so this works out if you're going for that kind of look. After everything dried, I styled the mask one last time, and I also added the horns, as people call them. I twisted some hair off on the sides and had them flare out for that signature look. Then I locked it in with hairspray. And now this is what I'm left with. This is the completed rehaul. I'll be showing you guys a before and after, so you can really see how crooked that hairline was. And the paint, it was nothing special, but for me, it was also a bit too shiny. And then there's the mask after all that work. I did change the lighting for these next few shots, and I gave you guys some more angles, but yeah, that's pretty much it. This was actually my first Halloween 1 mask that I rehauled, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I know there's still more room for improvement, but it's only going to get better from here. I also got a costume test for you guys. Not normally something I do, but there you go, so you get the full effect. And yeah, I know he doesn't wear a white undershirt, but whatever. Anyway, thank you so much for dropping by. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. I know I don't upload very often because I do get very busy, but hopefully I can change that and post more frequently. I do have other ideas and projects lined up, so stay tuned for that. If you guys have any tips or tricks or recommendations, I'm all ears, and I always appreciate that. Otherwise, thank you again, and you guys have a good one.